Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me on the Story Builder podcast. I am thrilled to be with my friend Marissa Malson, and she is an author. I have a little bit more about her here. She also has a digital marketing background. She went to the University of Dayton, and this is her first book, The Not So Average Life of Average Jane. Thank you so much for being with me, Marissa.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Excited to chat.
Absolutely. Let's go to the first big hard-hitting question here.
Okay.
What are some of your favorite stories?
Well, I have to say, first of all, Nancy Drew, love the whole series. I read that growing up. I had my mom's original books. My dad always read them to me and my sisters, before bedtime. So that's probably where like my love of mysteries started. So those are near and dear to my heart. But some of the other books recently I've read, I loved Where the Crawdads Sing. I thought The Housemaid was definitely like a twisty thriller.
Oh,
And I really liked this new series that I found, Finley Donovan is Killing It. So that's a new
I
one.
know these books. Yes, that's awesome. Yeah.
Okay, that one
Yeah.
was a little bit like laugh out loud. So I'm kind of been
Right?
liking, that kind of series where it's like the mystery, you might laugh a little. So it's more on the lighthearted end.
I love it. I love it. You've you've kind of show that progression there too, going from like Nancy Drew to the Frida McFadden to
Yep.
the Finley Donovan is killing it. And yeah, you're right though. It's such a mystery hook there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lots of twists and turns, lots
Yep.
of, fun hooks and questions.
Yeah.
Mostly then you're mostly inspired by mysteries. That's your absolute favorite genre.
I think it is. I've read a lot of different things over the years. I went through, a historical fiction phase, which I
Okay.
really liked that at that time. I used to read some more like kind of like lighthearted, like chick lit or like, romancy kind of books, I was younger. And so my taste has definitely evolved over the years. But I think like the one genre that I've never like, just kind of stopped reading was mystery. So,
I love it. I love it. I am a huge Scooby-Doo fan.
oh, yeah.
And I now rewatching these shows, I'm an old guy now, but I used to watch as a little kid and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, these stories, they're always so much fun."
Yeah.
Yes, they're predictable,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't care because you're
Right.
in for the ride.
Yes.
And I like rewatching it now, I'm like, "Yeah, it's always the guy you met at the beginning that did it. You know that's
Mhm.
always the bad guy, but you kind of don't mind because
Right.
it's like that adventure aspect of it now,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah, the adventure is like part of, the fun of it. And it's just like it's a mystery, like suspense adventure for a reason. It just kind of like takes you away from reality. So whether it's like predictable or it throws you a big curveball, I think it's fun either way.
Now, let's talk about your new book. This is your first ever novel.
It is.
Pull back the curtain a little. Let's
Okay.
tell me what was the catalyst here for the not so average life of average Jane?
Well, I studied journalism and I worked in, content marketing for about 15 years. So I have a writing background, but I've never done creative writing, never done fiction writing, never thought I would ever do this in my entire life.
Wow.
And you know what? I go to yoga regularly. So I was at a class. It was not, a usual thing for me to do.
Mhm.
I came out of class and went about my evening. And then all of a sudden, like this story was like in my head. It was like a voice just in my head, telling me like, the beginning, the first three chapters, it just was this average, kind of unassuming woman. And I was like, this is like just it's so weird. I've never had anything like this happen before. And I've heard other,
Mhm.
creative people experience similar things. It's never happened to me. Um, but it just wouldn't leave me alone. And so I grabbed my phone and I wrote the prologue in the first three chapters like that night on my phone. And then I got done and I was like, what am I doing? Am I writing a book? So I shared it with my family, kind of like tentatively, like, hey, I might be writing a book. And they're like, number one, move this to your computer now, back it up, and like keep going. And so I was definitely very encouraged by them. And after that, really, like I just kind of free wrote. It just, took me on a ride. And, at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing other than that I was enjoying telling this story. And that's kind of how I got started. And then I did, a lot like, learning how to publish, how I wanted to publish. along the way. And part of that was actually through the University of Dayton, my alma mater. They have the Irma Bomek Writers Workshop, which is a fantastic workshop for writers of, beginning skill all the way up to, very seasoned experts. And I happened to be down at Dayton for a basketball game. I saw a flyer for the workshop. It was happening in a few weeks from then. And I signed up, and it truly
That's cool.
changed my life because I figured out what to do with my book when I was done.
That is incredible. That
Yeah.
is such a amazing timing, because if you Google, and believe I have many times, how to write a book, it's like there's so many millions of responses, and some of the advice is great, some of it's terrible. There's a lot in between, and so that's fantastic. Your alma mater came in and kind of was the guiding light there. That's amazing.
It was all the things that happened, I think, at just the right time. And then it just, led me to, that moment, and, how I decided I wanted to publish. And, from that, coming out of that workshop, I thought, with my background in marketing, my sister is a designer, so she actually designed my cover. I thought it was something I could take on my own. And I did, work with a fantastic editor. So, definitely, get a good editor if you're going to, publish yourself.
Amen.
But yeah, I kind of built my own team, which I really enjoyed.
That's fantastic. Now, your main character, their strong suit is kind of being average, blending in.
Yes.
I'm floored that is able to work. I mean, yeah, you can take it in creative ways, but that doesn't really usually fall under the strengths when you're building a character.
Yeah.
What was your mindset kind of behind the scenes when you're thinking of the story? Were you thinking, hey, this character can adapt to any situation?
Yeah, I was thinking, this character, she really hated this quality about herself before. She wanted to stand out. She wanted to, be different. But she realized, because she blended in, even from a young age, she realized in school, people were telling secrets. They didn't realize she was there, or, she was, listening in on adult conversations. So, there's kind of flashbacks of how she realized that, hey, this might not be a bad thing. And as a private investigator, yeah, I mean, you don't want to be noticed. You want to blend in. So I think a lot of people underestimate her. And I think, that's part of, her character, that she just kind of, is used to being unassuming and, not, the top performer, even in her class. So you find out, she drops out of college to start her own private investigating firm. So she, she wasn't the one at the top of the class, the top performer, the one who was, having all the awards, maybe her brothers in the book too. So she's just underestimated, I think. And I like that about her, because in the end, she outsmarts everybody.
We all want to cheer for the underdog. By default, we all feel like we're the underdog. Even if we're not, I feel like it's just a mindset where it's oh, it's me versus whoever, just in conflict. And so it makes a lot of sense where we're cheering. And I think a lot of us even feel average, even if we're not.
Yeah.
We just kind of feel like, oh, I'm just one of the many people in the crowd. Yeah. So that makes sense. That's so cool. So I guess every reader can kind of have that commonality with your main character.
Yeah.
And by the way, writing it in first person, I mean, it's really, really common now, but a lot of writers, they don't tackle that approach so early and out of the gate. I'm just now, I think this is my 9th novel or 8th novel.
Yeah.
Now I'm approaching first person, but most folks are first person's really scary and I guess more revealing than third. So is it more the genre that dictated that to you, the voice, the story itself, where you're oh, I'm just going to use I, and it's good. People are going to analyze you, Marissa.
Yeah.
What's similar between you and your main character,
People ask that a lot. I felt like I could only tell it in first person, and I enjoy reading books in first person. I enjoy reading books in third person too, but when it came to me, it was just she was saying this in first person to me, and it it wasn't it was talking about me, but it was just this character was sharing that with me in first person. So I felt like to write it, I could only write it in first person. And that actually switches even too, because we switch narrators. So you
Right.
get to hear from the mysterious narrator, who also narrates in first person. So that's kind of, a
Right.
fun one that I get to be in somebody else's head at that time. But many people do ask, is Jane you? She's not, but I think my family will tell you that some of the things she says are very much like me.
Right.
They're like, oh, you would say that definitely for sure. Or,
Right.
just like the funny, like, cracks that she has or different jokes and things. So I think in that aspect, there's a lot of me that comes through, but, that's the first question people ask. Oh, is it based on you? I'm like, no, but I mean, I think there's always like a little bit of you in the characters you write.
And would you really qualify or I don't know if qualify is the best word for it, but would you consider your novel to be a cozy mystery, which has some, different tropes and different
Mm-hmm.
story aspects than like a traditional mystery or even a thriller where some differences there? Like, I guess a cozy typically doesn't have any bad language and
Yeah.
no sex scenes or anything like that, or
Yeah.
violence really. It's
Mm-hmm.
more toned down and more
Yeah. I
family
would
friendly even.
Yes, I would say it's cozy adjacent. It's maybe not as like cutesy as like a true cozy,
Okay.
but it's very tame. There are a couple just very mild swear words. I tell parents, not anything like, crazy. There's no, like spicy
Yeah.
romantic scenes or anything like that.
Right.
So it is like a pretty clean book. Preteens, I've read it all the way up to, a woman who's 95. So it's kind of like
Right.
fun for every age. I think I like to call it just a lighthearted mystery because, it's
Okay.
not the cozy in the way where it's, you maybe have like the cast of, there are quirky characters for sure. But this one maybe has a little bit more attitude than a cozy, but it doesn't
Okay.
like, go into like that thriller lane. So I feel like, I want like an in between. So I've just been
Okay.
calling it like a lighthearted mystery because it does
Lighthearted
like,
mystery. I like that.
yeah,
I
it
feel
has
like
the
that's a
funny
good
aspect.
I think
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. A
I get
little bit of
confused, and I'm
everything.
asking you this question because I get confused. I'm working on a crime thriller, and I'm kind of like, and I even was reading a book earlier today and
Yeah.
yesterday, like on genre. I
Yeah.
get confused between the fine line between, the expectations.
Yes.
So I get a little confused myself where it's like
Yeah.
some people are like, oh, well, this is a psychological thriller, and this is
Right.
just a thriller, and this is a mystery. And then where it's at in the bookstore is a whole other topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I know
So
it's hard to, figure out kind of like where you fit in. And that's what I was kind of like struggling with this book, where I was like, it's not a thriller. It is a mystery, but like it needs to be, classified kind of as like a different type of mystery. And so that's kind of where I landed, because it has a lot of those suspenseful elements. So there is like a suspenseful heist. There are, kind of like some sassy characters. But it's just, I would say it just has a little more attitude than, a true cozy.
I love it. I love it. I think you've obviously thought about this too, because it's like this is like
Yeah.
really an area you can geek out and
Oh,
be
yeah.
like, okay, where do I really fit? Um,
Absolutely.
I have to ask you this because this has been a challenge I'm facing personally, where it's like,
Mhm.
do you figure out the end
Mm.
first? Or are you just kind of winging it? A lot of people call it pantsing, writing by the seat of your pants, which
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of mystery writers can't really do that because you have to, set it up right and
Yep.
think ahead. So,
Yeah.
where do you fall on this?
Probably in between. So I definitely like to free write. I'm not, like outlining all the scenes. I know some writers like, just have their whole story storyboarded, like even in Excel, which I'm like, I can't do that.
I get
My
that.
story changes like as I write. And so like for example, Jane's grandma is a character in the story. I didn't think she would play as big of a role as she ended up playing.
Okay.
But I found that as I continued to write. So the ending I had kind of like a general idea,
I
not
get
totally
that.
at the beginning. Like, I wrote a little bit first and then I kind of thought,
Hmm.
okay, this is where I want the ending to go. But I, didn't connect all the pieces really until like I continued to write and the story took like a little bit of a
Yeah.
different direction than I
Yeah.
initially thought. But I think that's kind of like some of the fun. You figure it out along the way.
Yeah. I totally understand
Yeah.
100% where you're getting at. It's like had a general idea, but it wasn't
Yeah.
all completely ironed out.
Right.
Like you, I'm kind of in the middle. People might want to assume that I'm, this amazing plotter because I do have a storyboard, or I even
Hmm.
made a villain board one time in one novel where I
Ooh.
had a bunch of villains and I was like, who's who? What do
Yeah.
they do? And I
Yeah.
was really breaking it down. But a lot of that's just to keep it remotely straight in my mind
Sure.
because until you have it actually written down, it could all change
Oh yeah.
before
Hmm.
you even, you know, put it down. And then once you put it down, it's still subject to change.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I always say, just start writing. You can edit and delete it later if you don't like it.
right. Or recycle it
Or
down the
recycle
road.
it. Yeah. Yep.
What was your absolute favorite part of the process? Being that this is your first time through, you have the drafting and
Yeah.
revision and editing and
Yeah.
the publishing and the
Mhm.
marketing. What's your favorite part so far?
I think two things. Like, there's a lot of Easter eggs in the book. So, people who know me or even kind of like loosely know me will like pick out a lot of different things. There's a lot of family names in the book.
Oh
So,
wow.
my grandma's name is Marilyn Jane. So, Jane is kind of a tribute to her, but then also, you find out one of Jane's relatives is named Marilyn Jane. So, there's a lot of like, minor characters who are family names. So, that was kind of fun to like see the people that I know like react to these different pieces, and feel like they add that connection to the story.
Yeah.
But I think like the most surprising thing is actually like hearing from real readers, like people who don't know me at all,
Yeah.
and they all say the same things, which is interesting. That they
Really.
loved the characters, they were rooting for Jane. They laughed out loud, and so like of course they know my family was very kind, and they said keep going, that's great. But it's nice to hear from actual readers that like truly enjoy it, don't know me at all, but it's really interesting that they all say the same things. And I think especially in mystery genres, it can be unique to have a character that you really love and you're really rooting for, because a lot of them are very plot driven. So not
Mhm.
all the times in a mystery you're going to like the characters, but like you like the story. And this one, time and time again, people just said like, I loved Jane, I was rooting for her, I wanted her to win, like I want the next book.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah,
encouraging. Yeah, that's
it is.
fantastic.
It is.
I think there's something to it with that everyone can relate
Yes.
to feeling average, even if we aren't, or that
Yeah.
underdog thing. I think it makes sense. It's almost like it's almost one size fits all universal thing
Yeah.
there. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
It is.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
So you have a marketing background,
I do.
and I just getting to know you, seeing how you're kind of coming at it, because a lot of writers, myself included, like we might want to write books, but marketing is a whole nother thing where
Yes.
it's almost like you have to adapt a persona of, okay, and now I will go market and sell my book.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, it's kind of like you're a marketer first and foremost, and then
Mhm.
you're like, okay, this is almost another marketing project in a
Yeah.
way. What are some tips that you would give to some other writers, story builders who are like, I've got this book, but I'm afraid to share it, or I'm afraid to
Yeah.
sell it, or, even
Yes.
talk about it that much? Because I think a lot of folks fall into that category.
Yeah, I mean, even like for me as a marketer, it's hard at first, I think, when someone learns you're writing a book, they ask you what it's about, and you're like, you like, say like a couple sentences, you're like, I don't know, did I capture it? Because it's
Right.
hard to like talk about your book in just a few sentences.
Yeah.
So I would say practice definitely like your pitching. And it's not like a sales pitch. It's just, when someone's genuinely interested in what you're doing, think about how you're going to share that. So it's different than your book description,
Yeah.
because people are spending time like maybe reading that. So I would say number one, just practice and practice out loud. Say it to a
Yeah.
friend, say it to the mirror, say it to anybody. What's your 3 sentence like summary of your book? Like, why should people read it? And the more you do it, like the more you get comfortable with it too. Because like even as a marketer at first, I'm like, okay, well, how do I say
Yeah.
this? And so now I've said it so many times, it's
Right.
easy. My friends and family can probably parrot what I say, which is great because then, they're, out there sharing my story with other people too. So I was saying getting comfortable, just talking about it is the first thing. And you don't have to start face to face. That's the good thing. You can just kind of, practice with yourself and even take that little short summary and just
Mm-hmm.
share it, online. So you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to have a presence on every social network. But it is helpful, I think, especially when you think about like Instagram. I work with a lot of bookstagrammers, people on TikTok as well, which
Mm-hmm.
like the video space might not be as, comfortable for some people, but you can just share like that snippet, digitally and say like, hey, bookstagrammer, here's what my book is about. And then, it just gets you comfortable, at least, talking about it. And that's kind of the start of the process where it warms you up to, meeting people in person and, doing some of these different events, which have been huge for me.
I pulled up the listing for your book, and you have Ocean's 11
Yep.
meets Janet Evanovich Stephanie Plum.
Yeah.
So it's kind of Stephanie Plum meets Ocean's 11. And most people know that Ocean's 11 just
Yeah.
from the movie where,
Yep.
Brad Pitt and George Clooney and all that. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so it's a heist.
Yes.
Okay. And so you
Mm-hmm.
immediately get that. And then you also mentioned the Finley Donovan is killing it, which
Mm-hmm.
I know it's getting more and more popular as people are catching on to it. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
it's lighthearted,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny, it's
Mm-hmm.
that kind of tone. And I think that right there, it's like you can just kind of connect the dots really quick and say,
Yeah.
oh, it's like A meets B.
Yep.
Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like I think writers want to kind of reinvent the wheel
Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh, well, there's no other book out there like my
Well,
baby, my
what? And it's like,
baby.
listen to the people who are reading your book and reviewing it, because so many readers, reviewed, Average Jane, and they said, oh my gosh, like it's got an Ocean's 11 vibe, or oh my gosh, there's
Yeah.
a character, she's kind of like Stephanie Plum. There's even a funny grandma in it.
Yeah.
And even people too, that have seen Finley Donovan books online have then like visited Average Jane and like bought that book. So you can kind of like
Mhm.
gain some of that intelligence that way if you're not sure how to position it that way, or if you feel like you just need a reason to
That's it.
compare it to something that kind of gives you like the permission
Yeah.
to do so. But I think I like that when I'm looking for a book. I'm like, oh, it sounds like this thing I like and this thing I like mixed together. Great, I'm sold. I don't need
Peanut
reading.
butter and jelly. Yeah. It's like, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for you, essentially, you were saying it's really like practice,
Mm-hmm.
practice, see what the readers are saying, what the
Yeah.
audience is telling you, just keep an ear for that.
Mhm.
I know for me, it took me a long time to be like, hey, my crime novel is like Die Hard meets The Wire.
Yeah.
And it's like, it took me a long time to be like, oh, well, here it is, and it can take a while to be like, oh, here's my hook.
Mhm.
Here's what my description is.
Yeah.
Um, because you're so close to it and it's
Oh,
so
absolutely.
fresh.
Mhm.
But you, I think, had that advantage of, mysteries, you love mysteries,
Mhm.
the Nancy Drew connection.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, oh, well, here.
But, I changed my description, several times
Ooh,
since I
really?
released my book. So I've kind of continued to evolve it,
Okay.
based on like what I'm hearing from readers, what I'm, refining like my pitch to
Mm,
be about the book. So, another tag that I've been using is she might be average, but solving murders isn't. So, like that's
mm.
something I worked into the description. So I would say like revisit your description, a
Ooh,
lot.
that
Um,
right there, Marissa, that's huge because most people set it and forget it.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's something like keep it living, keep it breathing. Because I mean, you need to think about too, like, how are people like looking for your books? If they want a murder mystery, you better have murder mystery in your description, so you need to have some of those kind of keywords as well, but then like, keep it evolving, change it up and add, some of those comparisons to like, as you move along.
Mhm.
So it's something I visit quite regularly, just from my description, even from, my keywords on the back end, even what categories I'm in. I started in, a category I had like, crime and heist. That's great. But then I thought, you know what, I'm a little bit more similar to like humorous fiction in some
Right.
ways. So I moved it to that. And so you can kind of like mix and match and, change, all of that and, see what works for you. And then you kind of continue to narrow in. And then you get to that, point, but then still keep, evaluating it and changing it because, don't set it and forget it.
That makes a lot of sense. That experimentation,
Mhm.
always tweaking, always kind of working on it to make it better and hone
Mhm.
in. Um, that's fantastic. Yeah, I was scrolling through. You mentioned the taglines, like no one ever remembers meeting Jane Smith, and she'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah.
She might be average, but solving murders isn't.
Yep.
A cozy mystery filled with suspense, intrigue, and wit.
See, I should
Um,
probably change that. Lighthearted mystery.
yeah, to match what, like you said, yeah,
Right, because
continually,
I started using cozy,
right.
and then I've changed that language
So
since.
that's
So,
is that
mhm.
just Canva then that you're using to add the images to kind of amplify your listing and
Yeah.
make it stand out?
Yeah, I think a
That's
lot of
awesome.
authors, so those pictures that you're looking at, like that's
Mhm.
part of the Amazon A plus content. So you can utilize that
Mm,
section for those pictures, even editorial reviews. So you don't have to have, editorial reviews from like the New York Times, for example. You could take them from your bookstagrammers. You can take them from people who have, reviewed your book with their permission, of course. But you can use that A plus section there just to add a little bit more context. But yeah, those images are from Canva. I mean, it's very
that's
easy to
cool.
use. They have a lot of templates. I think it's definitely important to match it to, your kind of genre, your book's cover.
Right.
But it is something that, you can do quite easily. I think those images are a lot more attainable for people because, Canva makes it so simple.
You're all about action, tweaking, experimenting,
Yeah.
playing with it, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, one step at a time. One
Yeah.
one one move at a time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like another writer has to go out and be like, "Oh, I'm going to get a bunch of editorial reviews and
Yeah.
I'm going to do this and I'm going to, pick
Yeah.
one thing,
Oh, absolutely.
take action and
Yeah.
run with it versus and that's a huge part where it's like I think it's easy to get like, that analysis
Yeah.
paralysis and
Yep.
get a little freaked out and be like, "Ah, phooey, I'm just going to work on my next book." I mean, that's
Yeah.
honestly a very common thing.
It can be overwhelming. And yeah, you don't have to like, just do an overhaul of everything at one time. But yeah, I mean, just pick one thing. If it's you haven't visited your description in a while, take a scan, look at a
Right.
similar book. What did they have, in their description? Is there something, that you can include in yours, that are like kind of like relevant terms to your genre, to your book. But yeah, you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to do it, all at the same time. Your book is always going to be new for someone. So, it's
Ooh,
don't
that's a good
stop.
one. That's
Yeah,
great.
you don't stop after you release it. People are always going to continue to find your book. I mean, there's like the Stephanie Plum series, for example. That first book I think came out 20 years ago. People are
Yeah.
still reading it. So yeah, I mean, it's not like traditional publishing necessarily in that way, where it's like, okay, your marketing and PR is like your first 6 weeks, and then after that, might taper off. Keep going and just slow and steady.
Is there anything you wish you would have known before you published your first book that you're like, "Oh my gosh, I really wish I would have known this."
There are a lot
Like,
of things.
anything jumps out at you? Because I feel like
Yeah.
everyone has those moments, like, I learned firsthand, it's like, "Oh, if you do the pre-order thing, you can't have any advanced review copies,
Mhm.
like, listed, ready to go." I was like, "Oh." didn't know that. Learned that the hard way.
Yes, yes. I mean, I would definitely say give yourself ample time, because you're going to want to actually, first of all, get proofs. You might
Yep.
want to make some tweaks, to your cover. You might, have a typo that advanced reader
Sure.
finds. So give yourself ample time. I would say start with a soft launch. That really helped me. So
Good.
my book was live for about a week before I publicly promoted it. And so I used that soft launch period so that my advanced reviewers could post a review, so that, I could get like some early orders in, so that I could, make any changes that I needed to. And because, advanced reviewer at the very last minute did find a typo, and I was like, no. So, got that updated really fast. But it's just nice to make sure when everything is live that it's just like you and, your promo group, your street team, whatever you want to call them,
Mhm.
are the ones that are, interacting with that page, and then go full, launch maybe like about a week later. And it'll just take the pressure off,
Yeah.
because something, it's technology, it's publishing, something's probably going to, go wrong. You hope not.
Right.
But you're just giving yourself the time to, fix it and not stress about it.
Right. That's that's all very, very helpful. We
Yes.
need these need to keep these in mind because yeah, technology, shipping, working with other people,
Yeah. There's a lot of
give
logistics.
give yourself some extra grace there.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I I think when I spoke with you a little while ago, you're in the process of maybe doing an audiobook for your first novel?
Yes, yeah. So it wasn't something I had on my radar initially, but one of my advanced readers also has a background in kind of like audio production, and she listens to a lot of audiobooks. And so when she was reading the book, she was thinking like, "Oh, well, I would do this character like this and this character like
Mhm.
this, and I would say this like this." And so she approached me and was like, "Are you going to do an audiobook?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to eventually."
Mhm.
And she was like, "Well, could I work on it with you?" And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's great. I mean, you have to find, again, like building your own team because there's only so much self-publishing.
Sure.
So you have to, have those teammates.
That's good.
So yes, that will be coming earlier than I thought, which is,
That's
great. And it's
awesome.
great to have, someone who's already read the book, familiar with the book,
Right.
working on that as well.
Right? That's fantastic.
Yeah.
One tip I would love to share with the audience because
Yeah.
I've learned this the hard way myself. It's like sometimes the AI, like Amazon has an AI that'll read for you.
Hmm.
And I was checking it out and it sounded amazing for
Hmm.
like one sentence. But then I realized every sentence was the same. And I was like, ooh, that
Yeah.
doesn't work when
Yeah.
there's no inflection or
Right.
all voices are the same. I was like, ooh, it's fine for one sentence, but
Sure.
you really want to have that live voice, that
Yeah.
performance versus yeah, all the same. That would get really, really old
Yeah, and
really
I think,
quick.
it's just like you don't have to do everything at once again
Right?
with this. So it's like if you want to release an audiobook, at a later point in time, that's okay. And then it gives just kind of like new life to, your book as well. So yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it's just like if you're gonna do it, definitely work with, someone, an actual human who knows what they're doing.
That would work better.
And again, do it on your own timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's your normal writing routine like? I know this is your first time writing your like first novel and putting it out.
Hmm.
Are you kind of sticking with it and you do want to write more books and you're kind of have a writing routine down? Or are you kind of like, hey, I write when I can, or what's it look like for you?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely more books. This
Awesome.
Average Name is part of a series, so there will be two sequels and a prequel in this one. And yeah, I mean, my writing routine is I think I definitely like have a lot of like that morning inspiration. So, if I'm doing like, that more creative writing, I like to do that in the mornings. Also, even though kind of like at the end of the day, just being like outside, if it's like a nice day in that space and just kind of like having that creativity to relax. So I don't have myself locked into like a routine where I say, I'm going to write for, this time to this time every single day.
Right.
While I do, try to, have that time, but sometimes it's just like, oh, creativity strikes and you're like, all right, I got to grab my computer and like do it now. And then there's other times too where, I'm dedicating that time. So I would say kind of like my writing, I'm a little bit more like, kind of flexible in my
You're
schedule where,
flexible, but you really favor the morning a little bit.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it's different like types of writing too. So if I'm writing for like, marketing content, for authors that I write on like Substack, for example. So a lot of those, I think, I'll kind of knock out in the morning and then move over to, kind of like that book writing as well after that too. So yeah, I think like I'm definitely probably like a morning creativity person. But I do, kind of like writing like my book, especially this first one at the end of the day. And it was just kind of something like that I felt I was like not really work. It was like unwinding a little bit for me. So just,
Mhm.
kind of going and, enjoying outside and writing a few chapters. And that felt like
That's
a way like
awesome.
to unwind for me. And it doesn't feel like work
Yeah.
that way, which
That
is great.
sounds so scenic and beautiful, like
Mhm.
outside with the sunshine and
I love
the
it.
birds chirping. Maybe we're
Yep.
just lucky the weather's really great right now.
Yeah, you can't do it in the winter, unfortunately. At least, in Michigan where I am. So,
Right.
yeah, definitely, more indoor fire vibes when we get to that point.
Now you also work with your sister
I do.
at Just a Good Book Publishing. Can you tell
Yes.
me a little bit more about that, some of the services you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Just a Good Book Publishing, we're about just good books. So that's kind of, when we're talking about genres and different things,
That's
it's like
great.
sometimes I've wanted a book and I'm like, I don't want a specific genre. I want it to
Just a
be
good one.
just a
Right.
good story, just a good
Yeah.
book. So that is kind of how we came up with the name. And we're really about, working with indie authors in particular, because you do have to build your own team. So with my background in marketing, I work with authors on marketing plans. So whether that's, for your book's release, even after your book has been out, it's kind of some of the things we talked about.
Yeah.
What's your description? How do you change like some of your keywords? What can we do, to kind of get you, reaching more readers? What's your website looking like? What's your
Right.
social media presence? So we can kind of do some of those like audits and analysis to position you well as well. And then we also offer design services. So my sister designed my book, and I'll show you the cover here. So she designed
Yeah.
this.
That's great.
And that's something I think that a lot of authors, I mean, obviously you need a great cover, but it can kind of be, sometimes overwhelming to
Oh
find,
yeah.
well, where am I going to find a designer? Where am I going to find a designer that's not going to use
Absolutely.
AI for the cover?
Right.
Because that can kind of get you in a whole, lot of trouble. So she works, with me with other authors, and we kind of, go through a process where we look at the genre. We look at, similar books to create a mood board to kind of create basically concept designs for the author.
Right.
And then they can kind of choose, and then we'll like fine tune it from there. So that's kind of the space that we operate in, the creativity and then the marketing side as well. But it's just hopefully, one less thing where authors don't need to go to a lot of different places and, be overwhelmed, just by all the choices
Right.
people that they can work with.
Absolutely. I work with coaches all the time and I'm a coach myself, but setting aside time to specifically work on marketing and having
Mhm.
that accountability from someone like you to say, "Hey, let's go over this.
Yeah.
Let's look at this,"
Mhm.
versus putting it on your to-do list and kind of punting it down the road
Yeah.
or ignoring it, or you have good intentions, but let's be honest, other stuff pops up. But just having that
Mhm.
external accountability is huge, because all of a sudden it's like you're going to get it done and you're
Yeah.
going to improve versus, oh, well, someday, eventually, kind of
Yeah.
maybe question mark become, no, I'm doing it on Tuesday at whatever time. And
Right.
it's such a big different shift where most authors, I think, kind of we need that extra helping hand, that extra guidance there.
Mhm. Well, and it's hard with marketing, I think, because a lot of people, it's scary to put yourself out there. It's scary to, say like, I wrote this book and here's why you should read it.
Right.
And it's overwhelming because I think like there's so many channels, that you can be on digitally. You don't have to be on all of them. Like, that's the good news. So, it's like, which channels make sense for you, for your book, for your genre, for who you want to reach as readers. And then we can kind of come up with that actionable plan where it's like, here's where you should consider, having a presence. Here's the type of content we would like to post. Here's, people you could maybe partner with, that'll kind of amplify your reach. And you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to feel overwhelmed by the process because, it's a lot. You're an
It
indie author
is.
and
Yeah, it's a
you
ton.
do it all. So, but
Right.
you don't have to.
That's awesome. I love it. Just a good book publishing.com. That's fantastic. Or excuse me, just a good book, period.com.
Yes,
But the name of the company is Just a Good Book Publishing.
you got it.
I'll be sure to include the link in this podcast as far as so people can find that there for
Yeah.
your services, and maybe they need a cover, maybe they need some marketing help.
Mhm.
You also do help with some self-publishing itself too, right? Like helping them
Absolutely.
publish their books.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the other thing too, as an indie author, I learned kind of all of the self-publishing, and that
Right.
again is a lot of, overwhelming content too. There's a lot of content
Mhm.
out there, but it's like hard because you don't have like one actionable plan. So I work with authors to have like, here's your start to finish checklist, whether you're publishing on KDP, if you want to incorporate, Ingram Spark into that.
Mhm.
So I have some self-guided plans that, if people just want to kind of take a checklist and run with it themselves, we offer that. I also do one-on-one coaching too, where we go through that process together and outline those key timelines, whether you have, a firm release date or not. That's something we would work toward, because there's a lot of like ins
That's
and outs and
helpful.
different things, that I learned
Yeah,
the
there's a
hard way,
ton.
and I don't regret it because
Right.
now I know about it, but I think if I
Yeah.
can make it easier for someone else, I would have appreciated that. So,
Yeah.
just, learning actually how do you take your book from a Word document into a full-fledged book?
Right.
That's something we work on as well.
Right. And also because it's so fresh, you were just publishing. It
Yeah.
helps because they change things a
Oh,
lot
absolutely.
all the time. And then you're like, oh, this is different since I self-published a few
Yeah.
years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've learned personally, and I'm publishing books all the time too, but I'm learning things from you even right now where, having those graphics from Canva and the A plus
Mhm.
content and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot we can learn from each other,
Yes.
getting some help.
Yeah. Well, and it's just kind of like, things like sometimes you don't even like consider or you just don't know they exist. And so that's kind of, what helping authors like have more visibility into like, here are all the things. Again, you don't have to do them all at once if you don't want to,
Get some
but
help.
here's what should be on your checklist. And,
Mhm.
here's why it just like makes you stand out just a little bit more from the crowd.
Absolutely, absolutely, because that's really what the name of the game is
Yeah.
when you're competing with so many other books for sale.
Yes.
Any last words, encouraging words for other writers who maybe they have a book out, maybe
Hmm.
they haven't published a book yet? Doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, I would say keep writing. Don't give up. Whether you've published a book and you feel like it hasn't gone anywhere, don't give up on it. There's a lot that you can do to, kind of just kickstart your book and, give it some new life. Maybe it just hasn't reached the right readers yet. So that doesn't mean that, the book wasn't a success, but you might just need like a little bit of marketing help. And, that's something, that's easily fixable. And if, you're an unpublished author, keep going, and don't be afraid to reach out for help because you don't have to do it all alone. And I think indie authors can get very overwhelmed because you read a lot of things where it's like, well, I have to have my website and my sales
Right,
information, my marketing, I have to have advanced
right,
readers, and so it can just get really overwhelming. So reach out for help, build your own team, and most importantly, I think, I tell a lot of authors, your best friends will probably be your editor and your book cover designer because people do judge a book by the cover. So, you want that cover that people are going to pick up, but then you want to keep them there. And that's, with the content that's inside. And so I think, having a really great relationship with your editor and with, your designer, will just, bringing you leaps and bounds, ahead, because you do need to have a team, and, you don't have to publish alone. You shouldn't publish alone. It's, it's better with a team, but, as an indie author, you get to choose your partners.
I love it. Totally agree. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marissa. And I will include
Absolutely.
links to your book and your website and everything,
Yeah.
so folks can get in touch with you.
Awesome.
Thanks again for being on the podcast. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It's super fun chatting.
You bet.